My ex-husband abandoned me when I was pregnant, and he believed I was deceiving him. 8 years later, he begged to see our son, but I told him this made him panic and go pale. My ex-husband might be the most entitled man I've known. Leaving him was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made, and I thought I'd be able to live peacefully for the rest of my life. But here he is again. Let me provide some context. 8 years ago, Nathan and I were happily married. Our connection was secure, or so I believed. We had a good friendship. We dated for 2 years, were engaged for about a year as we planned our wedding, and then married. At that moment, I would most likely defend and fight for our marriage with my life. I thought we were soulmates, but maybe that was just me. My spouse lost his job just a few months after our wedding. It was a terrible time for both of us, but I was optimistic that we could get through it and that he would find another chance. We had some savings in the bank, and I worked full-time. Things were difficult for a few months, but he worked hard to acquire a job and was eventually accepted. After what felt like 1,000,000 interviews, I recall how thrilled we were when he received that email. I went all out and treated him to supper to celebrate. Little did I know that this job would eventually wreck my marriage. He returns from his first day of work, and instead of smiling, he stares at his phone. I could tell there was something wrong. The instant I saw him, a tense conversation ensued, resulting in an almost comically terrible turn of events. My husband's ex-girlfriend Jessica works at the same place where he has recently started. I knew about Jessica. Nathan and she dated for 3 years, and he proposed to her, but she declined and dumped him. And this was several years before we met and began dating. Obviously, we didn't spend much time talking about our previous loves, but I knew it was really hard on him, and he never mentioned her after that one conversation with me. My stomach fell when I found out it was Jessica, of all people. That was her. I wasn't sure what to do. Okay, yeah. It had been years, and he no longer felt for her. But the idea of them working together did not appeal to me. He appeared really upset, too, and we spent a lot of time discussing what we could do. He offered to quit his work, but our savings were running out, and I didn't know how long I could keep paying all of our expenditures without making significant lifestyle changes that neither of us would be comfortable with. Also, I reminded myself that we were all grown-ups here and that quitting a job for an ex was childish. We stayed up almost all night discussing what to do, and by the end of our conversation, I felt much better about the situation. It was absurd to assume that an ex from years ago could have any effect on our relationship. My husband was exceedingly caring and kind, putting all of my concerns at ease. The next day he went to work, and when he returned, he stated she was in a completely different department, and he rarely saw her during the day. He informed me that he never meant to speak with her unless it was for an unusual professional purpose, and that he would notify me right away if that happened. That put my mind at ease, and as the days went, I stopped thinking about her altogether. My husband remained as loving as ever, and I was proud of the two of us for overcoming an issue that could have caused significant problems if not handled properly. Looking back, I laugh at how inexperienced I was. I was so blinded by love and confidence in my hubby that I never suspected anything odd was going on. A few months into his new employment, he went on a business trip. He informed me that if all goes well, he might earn a promotion, so I was thrilled for him. I offered if I might accompany him and make it a mini vacation for the two of us, but he said he'd be working the entire time, so there was no point. He also stated that the crew attending the conference was all men, and none of them were bringing their wives or girlfriends, so I wouldn't be very comfortable. I was slightly upset, but I didn't say anything. Most of it. What he said made sense, and when he returned, I questioned him about his meetings and whether he believed he'd get the promotion, although he might need to go to a few more meetings with this particular contractor before the promotion could be granted. Over the next 3 months, he traveled at least once a month, but there was no word of a promotion. Rather than becoming suspicious, I was foolish enough to be concerned about his firm forcing him to work so hard without boosting his income. I also want to point out that following the initial discussion, neither of us mentioned Jessica once. She didn't cross my mind for the most part, and if she did, I preferred not to bring it up. And when I told my friends about it during the divorce, they all claimed it was extremely foolish of me to put so much trust in my spouse. I agree with them today, but back then, I would have trusted him with my life. 5 months into his new job, I noticed I had missed my period without thinking much about it. I decided to take a pregnancy test to alleviate my mind, and to my surprise, it came out positive. I was taken aback. It was not a planned pregnancy, but with Nathan's new work and both of us in solid financial standing, I thought it may be a nice thing. I was anxious about telling him, but yet incredibly excited. Nathan was on another business trip when I took the test, but he was returning the same day, so I opted to wait until he arrived. I recall how nervous I was and how I began thinking about my new life. It was late when we got home, and I remember staying up to eat dinner with him, and he came in looking upset. So I asked him what happened, and he said it was simply work-related, and he didn't want to talk about it. I said that I might have something to cheer him up and requested him to wait while I got the test kit. I instructed him to close his eyes, held them up, and then asked him to open them. He simply gazed at me for a few seconds before asking whether that was what he thought it was. I assumed he was just shocked and replied, "Yes, and we're about to become parents." Excitedly, I waited for him to recover and be joyful. But even after a few moments of anticipation, he kept that expression on his face. I became uncomfortable and asked him if he was okay and if he was glad about this. His entire countenance altered, and he said that he was simply taken aback by the surprise. I informed him that while I was startled, this may be a really good thing for us, and we can deal with it together. He still appeared uneasy and stated that he simply wanted some time to reflect. This reaction made me really upset. I expected him to be happy, or at least supportive. I told him I was disappointed in him, and he basically dismissed me, stating that I couldn't expect him to be thrilled about such a significant change in his life that occurred without his consent. I informed him that he agreed to this by marrying me, and if he couldn't be a good husband, perhaps we should reconsider our relationship. He answered, "Maybe we do," and left the room without saying anything further. I shouted that out of rage and hurt. I didn't intend it at the time, but his response destroyed my heart. I cried alone in the living room and slept on the couch because I did not want to see him in our bedroom. He never came to check on me or ask me to come back. Even at that time, I had faith that we would pull through and recover. But that was only the beginning of my issues. I awoke to him already dressed for work and preparing breakfast. I did not say anything to him and went inside our bedroom. Again, he did not try to stop me or say anything to me. I wasn't sure what to do. I waited for him to follow me in, but after some time I heard the front door close. I knew he'd departed. I spent the majority of the day crying to my friends and my mother. I called in sick at work. I recall it as if it were yesterday. And by the time he returned from work, I had prepared a lengthy speech about how he had broken my heart and needed to be a better husband to me. And little did I know, he also had a speech prepared, and it was nothing I could have imagined. The first thing he said when he got home was, "We need to talk." It worked for me. I needed to speak as well. I felt like I needed that conversation far more than he did. Really. He had prepared the surprise of a lifetime for me. We sat across from each other, and without warning he asked me, "Whose baby is this?" I was completely confused. I honestly didn't comprehend what he meant. So I asked him, and he repeated the question, "Whose baby is this? I'll never forget." I inquired what he meant and said that it was certainly our baby. What else is even possible? I mean, he told me we were past that point and I should simply accept the truth and be done with it. At that moment, I was beginning to feel afraid. It began to seem less like a joke. I told him again that it was clearly his baby, and I couldn't understand why he was even asking me such questions, because I had never been anything but devoted to him, and he had never acted like this before. He refused to make eye contact with me, claiming that this was when I still cared about our relationship. I'm pretty sure I was already in tears by then. I kept telling him that I loved him and that our marriage was the most important thing to me, but he kept asking the same question. He must have asked me a dozen times, and each time I was as confused as the first. He informed me that if I couldn't be honest with him, there was nothing he could do because he wasn't going to raise another man's child while living a lie. I was sobbing and telling him that I hadn't thought about another man since I met him, and I didn't know what I did to deserve such accusations. He said that, and I couldn't wait for him to leave the house on business travels so I could tell him everything he needed to know about my loyalty. I was too confused to speak. Every time he left for work, I felt sad and reminded myself to be an adult and support him in his career. I recall how difficult it was for both of us when he lost his job. After the first few occasions, I stopped asking to go with him because he always said he was too busy and didn't have time for himself until late at night. I stopped contacting him more than once a day while he was overseas since he didn't answer and texted me stating he was with clients. All I did was prioritize him, only to have him say that I wanted him to spend time with another man. It felt like a slap in the face. I felt ill to my stomach and thought I was having a bad dream. When I told him all of this, he urged me not to waste time making him look like the villain because he was tired of feeling unwanted and wouldn't allow me make a fool of him. He claimed that ever since he began working and traveling, I had been aloof and did not make him feel wanted. He stated he dreaded coming home because I didn't seem happy to see him, and he thought I was happier when he wasn't there. I continued telling him he was incorrect and that it was all a big misunderstanding, and I was just trying to be a supportive wife. And he kept telling me that I was hiding someone, and that he would rather spend time with him than be in our marriage. I asked him if he had any proof of what he was saying, and he said he didn't need proof to see what anyone with half a brain could see, so I had no idea what to reply. I continued repeating that I had not been with anyone. I spent the majority of his time here at home, except for 1 or 2 occasions. I went out with my buddies, and he could look at my phone if he wanted. His reaction was that he didn't need my phone, which contained deleted proof. That left me feeling absolutely defeated. What else can I say? I asked him what he expected me to do to prove my loyalty. I suggested a paternity test after the baby was delivered, even if saying such a nasty thing harmed my self-esteem. Never in a million years would I have considered voluntarily providing a paternity test. I've always been proud of my morality and ethics. Anyone who knows me would have supported me on this. Anyone but my own hubby, of course. And that's what hurts the most. He stated he couldn't wait 9 months for a betrayal, and he was not going to help me grow or nurture a child who wasn't his. I yelled at him, claiming it was his baby, and labeled him a deluded freak for not believing me. He said he didn't mind who I believed he was, but if I wanted this marriage to work, I needed to have an abortion. I was outraged that he would even say that. I encouraged him to consider what he was saying for a moment and how insane he sounded. He wouldn't move. So I asked him what he would do if I didn't get an abortion, which I knew I would never obtain. He informed me that if I wanted this marriage, I had to have an abortion or get divorced. Divorce? I couldn't believe he had used the word. I inquired if he was serious, and he responded yes. I'd had enough by that moment. Hearing those words seemed to take away all of my anguish. I told him he could do anything he pleased, but I'd keep and raise my baby with or without him. He went out of the house after telling me he hoped I didn't sleep with a deadbeat. That was our last time in that house together. I received a text from him later saying that he would be back to grab his belongings, and I told him when I would be gone and begged him to leave before I returned. The next day, I met with my lawyer to discuss the divorce. We had recently purchased our first home together, and I wanted everything to go smoothly and without incident. Nathan did as well. We agreed to sell the house and share the proceeds evenly. We took whatever we wanted. I moved in with my sister while I straightened things out, and he went anywhere he wanted. We did not keep in touch at all. Nobody in our circles or our family saw it coming. I can't tell you how many times I've shed tears attempting to explain what occurred to someone. Throughout everything, his attitude remained consistent. He refused to listen to me or anybody else, insisting that I had been unfaithful. I was friends with some of his co-workers' wives, and they informed me that he had been complaining about how I didn't care about being with him and never put any effort into the relationship. The entire divorce felt like it was happening to someone else, like a movie or something I was watching rather than something I was experiencing. At times, I wondered if I'd done something wrong to make him feel the way he said I did. More than anything, I wanted to talk it out, but he absolutely shut me out. When my son was born, I contacted him to let him know, and he did not respond. Months later, one of the wives contacted me and asked whether I had heard about him. I informed her we hadn't spoken, and she apologized as well, but she wanted to hear from a friend. I asked her what happened, and she replied Nathan had reconnected with Jessica. They appeared to be the office's hot issue, constantly teasing each other. I broke down crying. Over the next few weeks, I learned everything. They had been seeing each other for some months. All of his business excursions were simply excuses to spend time with Jessica at her home. Jessica was the one who indoctrinated him into believing I was meeting other men behind his back since, according to her, if she had a partner, she would never let him leave her so frequently, and a lot of other crap. I learned about all of this because my pals pretended to befriend her. I want to know what happened between Nathan and me. She was very arrogant about it and didn't appear to regret it at all. Honestly, I felt like the stupidest person in the world. I noticed all the signs on red flags that I had overlooked. In hindsight, it seems so clear. I was in a slump for several months. I was severely depressed, and it was unquestionably the most difficult period of my life. I had to abandon my career and rely on my family to help me. As a single mother, dealing with my sadness and the guilt of being a burden on my family was terrible. A difficult year, to say the least. I'm grateful my sister was there for me. I honestly don't know how I would have managed without her. It took some time, but I did heal. I stopped thinking about Nathan and Jessica and concentrated on my son. I found another work and acquired my own place. I thought I was done with my ex-husband forever, but 2 years ago I married an incredible man who treats me like a queen. He is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I am grateful that my son and I may have him in our life. Now that that's out of the way, let me explain why I'm writing this piece. A few weeks ago, I was aimlessly scrolling around Facebook when I received a text message from Nathan. We'd had no touch in years, so seeing his name appear on the screen was an experience I can't quite describe. I debated whether I should even open his text, but curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the chat. He stated he had been trying to contact me, but my phone number had changed, and he didn't know where I lived anymore. He wrote a lengthy text about how he had broken up with Jessica because she was cheating on him with many men, and that he should never have allowed her into our relationship. He stated he had been thinking about me and our son for the previous 8 years, but was too humiliated to contact me. He also stated that he knew I would never forgive him, but he wanted to be in his son's life and would do anything for the opportunity to prove himself worthy of being a father. The text contained a lot of additional information, but it was basically him groveling about how he wants to see his son. I honestly couldn't believe my eyes. After all these years, the poetic justice of Jessica cheating on him after accusing me of doing the same is not lost on me. It also felt amazing to see him grovel and beg to be a part of my son's life, since I know no matter what he says, it will not happen. I contemplated what I could do. I considered ignoring him, striking out at him, or simply blocking him. But then the vengeful part of my mind took over. So my son's birth certificate didn't list a father. I elected not to mention Nathan's name, and Nathan didn't object at the time. Legally, he has no authority over him. I dated my husband for 2 years before marrying him. He's known and adored my son ever since. He is the sole father figure in his life. A year ago, on our wedding anniversary, he formally adopted my son. We are family in every sense of the word. So I let the nasty thoughts win a little and texted my husband stating, I'm not sure what he was talking about. My son was never his to begin with, and my wonderful spouse has adopted him. I informed him that whatever Jessica had told him all those years ago was correct, and that he was the type of guy who might be cheated on. And I'm pleased he's all alone now. He deserves it. I gave him a picture of myself, my husband, and our son as a cherry on top. I warned him not to contact me again, and I blocked him. Of course, my claim that my son is not Nathan's biological child is incorrect. But that does not give him any authority over my son. He squandered that possibility before my son was even born. And I couldn't pass up the opportunity to make him experience even a small percentage of the pain he caused me. When I told my husband about what I did, he chuckled and urged me not to be so petty. I reached out to Laura last night. Her husband works with Nathan and inquired whether she had heard anything about him. She stated she was going to contact me about the same problem. Nathan apparently hasn't been doing well. He had come up to work drunk several times and was almost fired. Laura obviously didn't know what I told Nathan, so she assumed it was because he was finally digesting his breakup from Jessica. They split up some months ago. I just listened to everything and pretended to be astonished by what she said. I thanked her for being a good friend. I haven't told my spouse about it yet, and I can't tell any of my friends until I do. I've been feeling guilty. Maybe I went too far. I will update one. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to offer a big thank you for all of your kind remarks and suggestions. It has been quite beneficial to read through your experiences and viewpoints. It feels good to know that there are others who support my pettiness, and believe Nathan received exactly what he deserved. I do have an update on the Nathan problem. Laura contacted me again, stating that he had a full-blown confrontation with Jessica in the office one night while they were both working late. He had apparently caused a commotion, and other people witnessed them pushing each other around and being highly disruptive. Jessica and Nathan were both dismissed shortly after that, and no one heard from them again. All I can say about the situation is that I'm grateful he aimed his rage towards Jessica and isn't attempting to bring me into it in any way. I never want to deal with him again in any manner. I decided to tell Laura what I had told Nathan, and she sounded concerned. I mean, we both despise Nathan for what he did to my son and me, but she believes I went too far. And there's no purpose in allowing past events to have such an impact on him or anyone else. She is actually telling me to contact Nathan again and tell him the truth. She has vowed not to tell anyone about this, but she believes I should come clean. I disagree with this for a variety of reasons. Primarily because I do not care enough about Nathan to put him out of his suffering, but also because I do not want him to become enraged and attempt to gain access to my son. It seems implausible, but you never know. I refuse to take any chances with my son. He is simply too essential to me, and I do not trust Nathan enough to let something like this go. What I did may have been overly harsh, but he was prepared to think I had lied to him about my son's paternity when we were married, so I'm not sure why this appears to be such a huge blow to him. Now, Update 2. Since my last update, I've done a lot of reflecting, and I decided to have an open chat with my husband about what happened and what Laura told me. He was very kind and helpful, which made me feel much better. We sat down together, and I detailed the entire issue, including Nathan's message and my answer to it. My husband listened attentively, holding my hand the entire time, and when I ended, he informed me that while he understood why I did what I did, he also acknowledged that it may have been a little harsh. We discussed the significance of moving forward and not allowing the past influence our current happiness. This talk helped me put things in perspective. I realized that, while I may have been harsh, I do not regret standing up for myself or my son. Nathan made his decisions, and now he must deal with the repercussions. However, my spouse thinks that I should work on my animosity towards him because it is unhealthy. I kind of agree with him, but that is my business, as is my family, and I don't see why Nathan needs to be involved. Update 3. Hello again. I wanted to provide a quick update on my condition. After discussing with my husband, I decided to see a therapist to work through some leftover thoughts concerning Nathan and the entire situation. It's been quite beneficial to have a professional perspective and begin letting go of the past. I am doing this for my own marriage, not because I care about Nathan or anything. I believe that in order to be a better wife and mother to my children, I must let go of the past fully. Some of you also asked if I'd been to therapy before, and I have to confess you were correct about Nathan. I haven't heard from Laura since the last time, and I'm not interested enough to ask about him again. I do not care how he is. He's an adult who should deal with his own difficulties. I am doing fantastic, and that is all that matters to me.